Buckle up, excellence junkies, because this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Rockafuel. Do you wish that you could surround yourself with people that love to kick ass just like you? Well, come to my party, baby, and meet some of the brightest stars in the entrepreneurial galaxy, because it is my mission to give these entrepreneurs a platform to declare what they are on this planet to accomplish and to show you why they are rocket fuel. Hello, my dear Rocketeers. Oh, I am excited for today because we're going to talk about some serious shit, yo. Because if you are a high achiever, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are an executive, and you are just 5-star, bam, 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 and then you realize, you reflect at your home life and you're like, things are just not going right at home. Okay. This is the episode for you. All right. Because we're going to talk about how you can use some really, really smart principles from a very, very smart lady, right? To actually reset your marriage and be as successful in your relationship as you are at work. It is possible. Your relationship should not suffer because you are an ambitious professional. All right. So today I would like to introduce you to Jeanell Greene. She's a certified life and relationship coach. And I'm going to officially read my marvelous intro for her because it's going to get you excited. Jeanell Greene, she is on a mission to help save marriages from divorce and end that damn cycle of inherited trauma. Okay. This might be like something that you're like, what? Right? Inherited trauma that are caused by parents, by your parents, by their parents. And ultimately, whether your parent currently or not, you're going to pass it on. All right. So what I love is that her unique, really no nonsense approach as a certified life coach and a relationship coach not only helps her clients hit the reset button on their marriage, but also ultimately helps you grow into the best version of yourself. Okay. That's a really unique and powerful combination in a relationship coach. So hang on to your seats, my dear Rocketeers, and get ready to be schooled on love. Welcome, Jeanell Greene.
Thank you, Wanda. So happy to be here.
Yay. Now, as I had mentioned, in this intro, I think it's so important for people to even believe that they can reset their marriage. So I want to get kind of a better understanding of your background and why do you believe in this reset concept?
Yeah, well, first of all, talking about our children. I don't have my own children, but the longer I do this work, I realize this work is so much more than just helping two people stay together. One of my core values is family. To me, family is where we learn to love and be loved. And what I'm seeing out there, which is really concerning for me, are this thing that is supposed to be the most safest, the most loving, the most accepting, dynamic relationship are falling apart. And unfortunately, we were never given the tools. We didn't come with a manual. Our kids didn't come with a manual. No one told us how to have amazing connected relationships. If we think about our school system and how we were taught to communicate, because communication, as we all know, is the foundation to having any strong relationship. But if we really think about what we were taught, what we were conditioned to how to behave, it's really this very competitive, very dominating, let's win, let's be at the top. Let's respond, let's interject, we'll justify ourselves, we'll judge, we'll give our opinion. But a lot of these concepts don't really work in relationships, especially when you're in conflict. The last thing you
Mm.
should be trying to do when you're in conflict is try to win. But that's our just our innate human nature
It's like
is
a
want.
default.
Yeah, but as we all know, for a lot of us that that are married or in relationships or are have completed a relationship, we know that a lot of times we don't feel loved, we don't feel heard, we do feel judged, and we don't mean to do that for other people, but it's like this knee-jerk reaction. So
Mm.
until someone comes and says, listen, we got to slow things down to speed things up. That's something I love to say. We're just going to keep tripping over the same obstacles that we've been tripping on our entire lives. And then we wonder why every relationship or, every marriage we go through, we keep bumping up against the same issues. And we think
Mm.
the other person, but then when we realize, wait a second, who's the main denominator here or the common
Mm.
denominator, then we really got to look at ourselves and go, okay, what is it about me that this is occurring? And it's like the theme of my life. And
Yeah.
and I think that once we can start to look at ourselves and really own that and love it and have compassion, now we can actually go and have that for other people. A lot of
Mm.
people come to me and say, Jeanell, how do I forgive? I deal with a lot of infidelity. Jeanell, how do I forgive my partner? My very first question is always, what is it that you haven't forgiven yourself for? Because until you know it for yourself, how can you give this thing called forgiveness to another?
Mm.
So it
Mhm.
really starts with us. But
Ugh.
to answer your question, like I had one client, I've actually had several clients say to me, my 10-year-old daughter just told me she never wants to get married ever again. Or she never
Mhm.
wants to get not again. She never
Okay.
wants to get married. And
Yeah.
that really is the moment when the parents go, okay, we're messing up our kids. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I apologize, but I the thing that keeps on kind of going spinning in my head is family is where we learn to love and be loved. And that's really powerful because when we recognize that, then we also recognize that if we're not loving as well as we would like to, like when you do something like, "Oh man, I wish I could do this. It's just not inherently in me to do this." And you desire and you have that recognition of like, "Ah," that's where you can reflect back and say, "Okay, I didn't learn to
Mm,
love this way."
mhm,
And it allows you that space for forgiveness,
mhm.
right? And the space for growth to say, I think this is really, really powerful to say, okay, because a lot of times people are like, well, this is just isn't me.
Yeah.
It's not me. Take me or leave me. Blah, 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 as if like we have no control over like how we behave,
Yeah.
And but it's okay to say, okay, well, where did I learn
Yeah.
how to behave this way? It was from home, from family. And then now do I want to just continue that forward, even if it's in my family of just me and my spouse? But it translates in how you interact with aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and like everybody, all the people that you love that you could feel are family, right? If you just don't know how to behave that way. So that
Mhm.
really like weighed a lot, when you said that, I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
And it kind of relieves yourself a little bit of like fault, you know,
Yeah.
and not to say that it's like, "Oh, it's not your fault completely," but it's kind of like to understand that there's a root to it, that means that you can do something about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and that it was a programming that was put in you as a child. So to unprogram that takes work. And so I think you're right. We are so hard on ourselves. So, for example, one of the things that, I love my family. I am so lucky to have the family that I have. But one bad habit that I didn't even realize that we had until I met my husband. And, talking to other people, it's so funny because other people are like, oh, that was my family too. But
Mm.
in my family, when you fought, you would, you would go into the ring and you would duke it out. And then when you got fed up, you just left the conversation, you walked away, you went into your room, you cooled off, and then you came back and you acted like nothing happened.
Mm.
And so I never learned to apologize, to be honest. And
Mm.
my husband is the opposite. My husband's the over apologizer. It's like if I don't sleep, my husband's like, "I'm sorry, baby. Did I wake you? I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. Don't need to apologize." But until he really showed me, like, "Oh, it's okay to apologize. You can actually own your shit." I was taught that you say what you say, and if you upset people too bad, and we just all love each other, and it's great because we learned forgiveness, but we didn't learn to talk about it.
Yes. Each of you learned something different, a different approach. And I think that's really important too, to recognize that if families where you learn to love and be loved, right? That each of you had a different school.
Mhm.
Right? Each of you
Mhm.
came from a different school, and there are areas that complement each other that you could learn from each other, and but when you're like, I can't believe that you don't react this way, like, does he ever say, yeah, why wouldn't you apologize? You did this or that, or it's like, oh, I wasn't really taught to
Yeah. See, but I
think
didn't
of
even
that.
see that until I met him. So
Right.
for 40 umpteen years, oh, maybe not 40, but 30 umpteen years, I thought, yeah, yeah, if you would ask me, Jeanell, do you know how to apologize? I'm like, yeah, sure I do.
Uh-huh.
But when we're in conflict, and even though, I'm gonna admit something really vulnerable right now.
Uh,
Even though I know that I'm beating him, like I'm like, I know that I'm being a bit of a handful. I'm being a little sassy right now. I don't really need to. And here he is, like, apologizing, baby, will you forgive me? And I'm like, I
uh,
guess no. Even though I know it's kind of actually my fault, but he's just such a great apologizer that I'll just be the one to accept it. But it's just so interesting to see, like, okay, why do I do that? Why don't
mm,
I just, but again, it's like, it's my mom. My mom is like right there, and my dad.
yeah.
And so it's like we repeat the behavior that we see at home, even when we know that that behavior is not great. So, for example, I have a lot of clients who they yell, and they're like, I don't know how to not yell because that's how my parents communicated.
Yeah. And the thing is, part one is just to recognize that and be like, whoa, okay, this is what I learned.
Yeah.
Part one, right? Okay. So now it's something that I can correct, but acknowledging that, geez, it's been 30 something, 40 something, maybe 50 something years that you've been doing this thing. It's going to take work.
Yeah.
Is it important enough for you to do this, right? And so it's interesting, because I feel like in order to move forward, you a revelation like this has to happen, where you're like, no wonder the stuff that I've been doing hasn't been working. Like, okay, I need to. You kind of have to have a reset mentality,
Yep. Yep.
period.
Yeah.
To believe that you can reset your marriage, you kind of have to believe that you can reset yourself a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like New Year's. It's kind of like New Year's resolutions a little bit, right? But I think that we all have those moments. The issue is that we don't know what to do about it. Like, we see it, then we're like, okay, now what? Like, how do I
Mhm.
be any different? Because this is the issue, that change is hard because change occurs outside of our comfort zone. Growth occurs where we've never been before, where we don't know that we don't know. And of course, we all know that the unknown is so darn scary. And because we've
Mm.
been operating on this, if you want to call it programming, for decades, to try to see yourself some other way can sometimes be hard. So, for example, I am a chronic worrier. I love to worry. I don't know why. I just love, maybe it's coming from like poverty, family, but it's
Mhm.
there's this survival constantly. And sometimes I ask myself, who would I be being if I wasn't always worried? And
Mm.
it's scary because I'm like, I don't know, because it feels like it's so part of me. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm,
To
mhm.
break out of something so drastically different, it really takes some serious work. And really, in my opinion, you need to have accountability to be able to make that kind of uncomfortable change.
Yeah.
That's why people hire personal trainers, because, like, I want to lose 30 pounds in the next 4 months. And I
It's
need
not gonna be easy,
to.
I recognize it, it's yeah, this isn't and it's interesting, can you talk a little bit about the difference between a therapist and a coach? I think that's important, especially for folks that are kind of like, I have no idea. But I think it's important for somebody to kind of understand that because you talked about the that athletic approach and such. So give us your
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, I don't I don't think there's just like one definition, but I can tell you how I see it. Okay?
Mhm.
Because you're right. I mean, there's certain people that go to see a therapist that shouldn't be going to see a therapist. And then there are people that come to see a coach that should go see a therapist, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So what I understand from a therapist, well, first of all, I'm not a therapist.
Mhm.
I do not cure, I do not diagnose, I don't assess those kind of things. As a coach, to be honest, my approach is that there's nothing wrong with you. You're
Mhm.
just another human being like me, trying to figure out the world. And yeah, maybe you're experiencing things like depression and these other things, but I don't know. For me as a coach, I don't come from that. I don't come from I need to fix something that's broken,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of therapists come from. For
Mhm.
me, it's really about, Wanda, what is it that you want for your life?
Mhm.
What is the vision that you have for your life, for your marriage, for your children? And what are the ways of being and thinking that are in the way, that are like the roadblocks to getting on the and to getting there? And
Mhm.
usually it's fear.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the work, as if you think about a hockey coach, right? A lot of it is mindset, a lot of it is strategy, a
I was
lot of.
gonna say it's like a strategist. That was
Mm,
kind of like my perspective as well, and saying it's not um it's one thing to kind of acknowledge that yes, have been things in your past that have affected how what your perspective is and such. But as a coach, and especially for you, you're also a certified life coach, but you also come from a corporate background, so your approach is very like strategy
yes.
based. And this is kind of why I started the podcast talking about people who are inherently high achievers at work as well, to kind of loop it around so people are like, huh, how did this connect, right? But because when I met you, Jeanell, it wasn't just about the soft side of relationship mending. It was about a very pragmatic approach that works. And what's interesting is for you, I mean, you have this reset your marriage in 12 weeks sort of program, which when we talked I was like, but it's understandable when you're really thinking of it pragmatically, when you're creating a
Mhm,
strategy, when you're saying, hey, here are some tactics, here's some things that you can do, try it out, let's talk
mhm.
next week. You really move forward very quickly instead of kind of like marinating in your past, or
Yes.
like over analyzing something.
Yes.
It's like it is what it is.
Yeah.
We have our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I do believe there is this situation. I've spoken to many coaches that you're qualified enough to say, okay, I do think that a therapist is something that you should speak to about, like a post-traumatic stress syndrome, or certain things that do
Yeah.
have a deeper thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't move forward
Yeah.
with your marriage, and perhaps that's part of your strategy that the coach is providing you,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like when your coach says, okay, your knee is kind of bad, all right, you should go to a medical doctor to do this stuff with your knee, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still your coach because I'm giving you that path and I'm giving you that accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think that a lot of people, like you're saying, a lot of people aren't ready for coaching. one of the things my people will tell you is I'm a really great listener, but I listen in a very distinct way.
Mhm.
I'm really listening when I'm listening to my clients. I'm really listening. What's missing? Is it playfulness? Is it quality time? Is it that they don't love themselves? But,
Mm.
as soon as they go into like complaining and blaming and shaming and just going into victim mode, that doesn't help me. That doesn't help me move them forward. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, if someone is coming to me and says, I just need to just vent and just say what I need to say, then I'm going, you know what? That's not me. That's not what I
Mm.
do. Hey, but when you're ready to move forward, when you're ready to get over this thing and let go, come talk to me. Because
Mhm.
here's the thing, what I recognize, so many of us, when we live in fear, all we focus on is resisting what we don't want. So guess what we
Yeah.
get more of is more of what we don't want.
Yeah. Totally focusing on that. Yep.
Yeah, all the past, the infidelity, the disappointment, the frustration, that's all the energy we put in, rather than focusing on, okay, what can I do? How can I be a better partner?
Mhm.
How can I be a better person?
Mhm.
And starting to create a vision for the future. It's like, okay, what's happened. But what do we actually want to where do we actually want to go? It's like going to, on a vacation. You got to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're just going to be just driving aimlessly with
Yeah.
really no purpose. But
And the thing is, like, where you're going needs to be, like, mutually agreed upon,
yeah,
right? So, I know that you call this, like, the unified vision, right? So where you're helping people get to the point of, like, what is an awesome marriage, like, for both of you guys so that you're
Mhm.
moving together. And yeah, sometimes you're moving, why you're complaining is because you're moving towards your own vision and not even taking into consideration what the other person's vision of a good marriage is.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is when I get onto a call, I'll say first, what are you dealing with? What are the frustration, the pain that you're experiencing? And they can talk for 45 minutes about that. And then when
Mm.
I flip it and I go, okay, so I got what you don't want, but tell me, what is it that you actually want in your marriage? They look at me like, huh?
Huh?
They're like, I've never thought about that. And I'm
I can
like,
complain up the yin yang, but like,
ask me what I want, can't tell you. So I think that that's the first indication that, we're going the wrong direction, because if where we want to go is called this like happy place, love, affection, joy, how is living in fear going to get you there? It's not. It's taking you away from that. But again, we were never taught, how do I turn that boat around? Because as
yeah.
humans, right, our old reptile brain is always in survival. The part of the brain that is about creation and about positive psychology and intelligence is a different part of the brain. So
Mm.
if that reptilian brain is super strong and you're not working out this other side of the brain, guess who's going to win every single time?
Mm.
So this
Mhm.
is why, I love the work that I do, because I give my clients the tools to be able to have really strong mental fitness and emotional resilience, because life is challenging. People are challenging. So if
Yeah.
we equip ourselves with ways of being that we don't get triggered by every little thing that life does to us, then we can really create some peace and joy and really be present in the moment
Mm.
rather than resisting.
Mm.
One of my favorite quotes, and I say this to myself, I say this to my clients every single week: pain and suffering only exist when you resist what is so. And so that's really
Mhm.
about, like, if you think about that energy, that negative energy, or when you think about when you have a quote unquote problem, you are resisting reality. But when
Yeah.
you can be like, hey, you know what? My parents were the way they are. I'm the way I am. My body's the way I am. Versus my husband shouldn't be this way. My wife shouldn't be this way. My body shouldn't be this way. The world shouldn't be this way. There is so much resistance and fear there. And this is why when people are upset, they're tired, because that stuff is just energy soul sucking.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I can imagine some folks listening and being like, ah! how do I get my spouse to listen to this episode? How do I share this excitement for a reset, with my partner? And I my Rocketeers know that every episode we actually ask our guests to prepare an audience gift and something educational. And so, guys, I want you to take this inspiration and turn it into action. And what Jeanell put together is really, really cool. So it's a guide on resetting your marriage and how to start the conversation. Specifically, it should actually say how to start the conversation, because you spent like 5 pages on just helping somebody understand, like, oh gosh, how do you clear, all the bad stuff that's in your mind, and what would they possibly say, and how do I get myself in the right mindset, and all of these things, just to be able to say, I'd like to explore resetting. Are you up for it? It doesn't mean that you have the solution. It's just starting the conversation about a reset. So I'm going to invite you to pull out your phone. If you're driving, just pull over. Just find some place. I'll give you a couple seconds. Just find some place to to pull over. I don't want you to delay it, because this is important. This is your marriage. This is your life, your family. This is the everything outside of work, which is pretty damn important, you know?
Yeah.
And
What are we working for, right? Like, why do we go to work? Why do we kill ourselves at work to do what we do? Is so that we can have the life and give the life to our family that we've always wanted to give.
yes, yes. So pull out that phone, and if you're in the US, you're going to text RF for Rocket Fuel dash reset now. So that's RF dash RESETNOW, reset now, to 411321. And you're going to immediately receive, well, hopefully, if you've texted us already, we already have your email address. If it asks you for your email address, put that email address in, and immediately in your email inbox, you will receive this PDF on how to start the conversation to reset your marriage. Okay. If you are outside of the US, you can also receive this. I'm actually going to fix this. It's reset now. Okay. And you're going to text it using WhatsApp. All right. To 1-909-741-1321. That's 1-909-741-1321. You're going to text RF dash reset now. I apologize. I wrote it wrong on this thing. So if you're watching the video, don't listen to me right there. Da, da, da. I'm going to show it once again. RF dash reset now to 1-909-741-1321 or to 411-321. All right. If you are in the US, I will share this at the end of the episode once again. But honestly, I want you to be motivated. I want you to get this piece. Read it, think about it. And what I love is that Jeanell actually gave you a link to her freaking calendar, guys. Okay. So schedule a free discussion with her, right? Maybe you read this and you're like, shit, I still don't know how to have the conversation. Or maybe you had the conversation and hopefully it's like you had the conversation to say, hey, you want to meet up with this coach and just see what she has to say together, right? So it could be together. It could be just you by yourself. Somebody needs to move forward on it. But I want you to believe that you can reset. And so I'm going to ask you, Jeanell, can you share a little bit about your background? You shared a story about your parents, right? And yeah, and why you even believe that a reset is possible. So please share that with us.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with my my infamous family mommy daddy story. So it all started when I was 9. So when I was 9, there I was sitting on my bed. And there's moments in your life that you'll never forget. You remember the it was nighttime. I remember the PJs I was wearing. I remember it was winter. Anyway, so my mom calls us down, and I have a brother and sister, and I'm the eldest of 3. She calls us down, and standing at the door is my mom, and beside her is my dad, and beside my dad is a set of luggage. And my mom looks at us and says, kids, your dad doesn't love us anymore and he's leaving. And I'm a daddy's girl. And so, I was sort of standing there like, what? And he didn't say a word. He just turned around and he left. And I remember standing there at the bay window watching him go down the stairs into this brown car that I'd never seen before. And he drove away. And 25 years later, I realized that in that moment, that 9-year-old decided that she's unlovable. She can't trust people. And everybody she loves will leave her. And so fast forward, here I am, Michael, my husband, who's freaking amazing, is my inspiration, is my teacher, is my partner, he's amazing. But, before him, I actually was married before. And when I was going through that divorce, I was like, what is it about me? And that was the moment I started to do this work where I started to look at myself. But going back to my story, so what you guys don't know is that my dad cheated on my mom with my mom's best friend who lived in our basement, and he got her pregnant. And so he was doing this back and forth thing. And eventually, of course, my mom caught him and said, listen, you need to make a decision. It's either us or them. And he chose them. So fast forward 3 years, here's one of the things I remember that time is my mom being on her knees at church every single day, just praying for something, for an answer. But I would have it that 3 years later, my dad got sick. He was diagnosed with double renal failure and had to go on dialysis and go on a kidney transplant list. He couldn't work. So he came back to my mom, and my mom is a nurse. And he said, I'm sick and I need someone to take care of me. Will you take me back? And my mom said, absolutely, because she still loved him very much. And she said, under 2 conditions. Number 1, we never talk about this ever again. We just let it go. We move forward. And number 2, you never go back there. If you're here with us, you're here with us. And he agreed. And she kept her word. And the amazing part about this is not only was my dad a better father, a better husband, we were happy, but, at the end of the day, my dad actually passed away 13 years later. But at my dad's funeral, I got to meet my half-brother. And my half-brother is the spitting image of my father. Spitting image. And it was so trippy. And so now I've got this new brother who my mom loves, we love. He is one of our siblings. We treat him as such. And so, there's times in life when we're like, why did that happen? What? And it's like there's always beauty in every tragedy. And he is the gift that we got. And so, really what I was taught in that moment with my parents is that when you love someone enough, you will fight. You will let go of your ego and your pride. And you will, and I think that's part of the problem is we're so afraid of what people think that we will actually betray our own wisdom, that we know that, this is what I should be doing, but what are people going to think? And so this is why when I talk to couples that, are dealing with infidelity and trying to move forward, I'm like, you can recover from this. You don't have to live in the shadow of this thing that happened in a split moment in time. If you're willing to focus on something else other than that thing. But that's what we just keep focusing on that past thing, and we dig ourselves in a hole, and then we wonder why we can't. It's like, it's too much has happened. There's too much water water under the bridge or whatever, right? Like, can't seem to move forward. So, and I share this story because I think that if you think there's hope, there's hope. If you don't think there's hope, there's no hope.
Right.
And you can actually have even a better family if you're willing to hit that reset button, leave everything in the past, and really be committed to having love and forgiveness and compassion in your family and teaching your children that
Yep.
it's okay to screw up and you don't have to pay your entire life and be tortured for this one mistake. Mistakes should be corrected, not punished. And
Right.
unfortunately, our parents and their parents taught us that when you're a good girl, you get love. When you're a bad girl, we withhold love from you and we punish you for that. And now we're
Right.
doing that to each other.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's super powerful. I mean, guys, the the foundation is love.
Yeah.
Like foundation. And then to know that to give yourself that freedom to grow into the next level of your relationship by letting go, by together agreeing to hit that reset button, right? By together um just aligning with this like unified vision of like what is it that we want to be or to achieve, by recognizing like what you brought up earlier, the fact that the family is where we learned it, right? And like, do
Mhm.
we want to pass this on? um all of that stuff. And this is why, I mean, it's a powerful journey. This is why it's so important to have a coach to take you through that journey. It's one thing to know, and especially if you are that high achiever, to be like, "Yep, all that makes sense." Da, 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 da. But sometimes you just need that third party to kind of give both parties permission,
Mhm.
you know, to say
Mhm.
like it's okay, or to remind the other, because it's difficult to remind your partner. I mean, you have to have great communication skills to lovingly remind them, well, you're kind of bringing up the past. Remember, we don't want to do that. I mean, like when you're already like, you're trying to repair, like you can't be the person to like keep your shit aligned and then keep the other person's shit aligned. Like everybody's got to have their own kind of sense of accountability too, and responsibility
Yeah.
for their role in the process. Yeah, I really love this approach, and I hope you guys as a listener, whether it's you, whether it's um somebody that you love, a friend of yours, a colleague of yours, like share this episode, right? I want people to understand all of these principles, but I think the power of reset is something that really needs to be thought about a little bit more, recognizing that it is actually possible. Like it seems like impossible to like,
Sure.
especially when you're dealing with infidelity or something, it seems impossible to forget. But what you mentioned was putting something else in the focus spot, in the
Yeah.
spotlight, right? Instead
Yeah.
of putting the bad thing in the spotlight, the good thing is that, why are you so heartbroken? Because you love this person so much. And
Yeah.
there was a reason that you chose to marry them and they chose to marry you, and
Yeah.
being reminded of that, and that being the goal again, you know?
Yeah. I think sometimes we forget that people don't mean to hurt us.
Yeah.
Even with infidelity, people don't get married, go, yes, I'm going to go get married so I can cheat on my wife, right?
Yeah.
That's not it. And I think sometimes, we get mindlessness mixed up with maliciousness. Like we
Yeah.
think our partner's out to get us. Well, it's like, no, he just, especially with men, right? Women go, well, he should know. Well, really? Should he? How would he know? If
Mm,
hasn't been equipped, or you haven't communicated your needs, well, he's just going to do what he thinks is right, which is definitely not what you think is right. But in communication, if we had communication as part of this, then maybe we could really get back on the same page. But, a lot of times when I meet couples, their first comment to me is like, we're just too different. We just have nothing in
mm,
common. We have no connection whatsoever. We have different, hobbies, and they just feel like they're on different planets. And it's like, what's the point? But when I
mm,
ask the question, okay, well, at the end of the day, what is it that you want? 9 out of 10 times, they want the same thing.
mm,
So it might be, you know what? I just want to have a partner and feel loved and accepted. I just want to feel appreciated. I just want to have a marriage where we're happy and we don't fight. And so when I ask the other person, well, what is it that you want? They're like, same thing. So this is what I mean is like, we need to have conversations about like, what is actually important at the end of the day and get on the same page. Because once we get agreement that we're going in the same direction called, Jamaica, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Now we're like, okay, let's book the flight. But if we don't even know where we're going, well, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Well, guess what? We're not going anywhere.
Stagnant. Yep. Yeah.
So it's really important to go, okay, what am I committed to at the end of the day? So for example, let's take an infidelity couple. At the end of the day, what is it you want? And someone might say, well, what I want is to trust my partner again. Okay, well, why is that important? Well, I want to feel loved and I want to have partnership till I get old. Okay, got it. And so when I go to the other person, they're like, yeah, that's pretty much what I want too. But sometimes it's a very vulnerable conversation. And so although we know, you might be listening to this and going, yeah, I need to go do that. But the actual action to go and doing that, there's probably some physical reaction happening in your body right now that's going, right? And so that's why having a guide that says, a guy that's been there, that's helped other people get there, that goes, I know the way, just take my hand and follow me. You don't have to worry. You're not going to get lost. I know the way. There's so much more peace and assurance and like, okay, someone's got my back. Because a lot of times when we're, I remember being in my own divorce, it's a very lonely time. It's a very shameful time. I never told anybody that I was getting divorced. No one even knew that we were having problems, not even my family. Because I didn't want people judging me or him for the problems that we were having. And so I can really get that. That's a lot of couples. They keep everything, behind closed doors. And the worst part about that is we often have no one to talk to, no one to be our compass, no one to remind us that everything's going to be okay. And so then we start to pick up, we try to numb out. That's when we start to watch porn, we start to drink, we start to do drugs, we start to gamble, we start to be, have a phone addiction. It's because we're trying to run away from something that we know we need to deal with, but we just don't know how to deal with it. And that's why, the work that I do is so exciting for me. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting this message out. To say, it's not your fault, and B, you're not alone, and C, you know what, there is hope for whatever it is you want out of life. Everything you want from life is on the other side of fear. Is one of my favorite quotes. And it's so true.
Says the marriage reset strategist. I love it. All right. Well, we are way past my expected time, but this is such juicy stuff. I want to thank you so much, Jeanell, for sharing your story, being vulnerable, but just offering so much information in a short period of time. I want to give the audience the opportunity once again to text RF for Rocket Fuel, RF-reset now to 411321 if you're in the US, and you will immediately get that starting that conversation, the guide to starting the conversation for resetting your marriage. And once again, not only is it the guide, but it's also access to Jeanell's calendar. And I think that's really important, just to have that initial conversation. I understand it may be uncomfortable, but that's the point, just to break the seal and to start figuring out what is the possible next step, right? If you are outside of the US and you're listening to this episode, you can get this resource as well. Just use WhatsApp and text RF-reset now to 1-909-741-1321. Remember to provide your email address if we ask for it, so that we can email it to you. And that's that. I want to say thank you so much once again. Jeanell, do you have any last minute recommendations for our audience? This is going to be, if they're touched by what you have to say right now, what's really the first thing that they should do?
Admit that they want to reset their marriage. I think a lot of times we allow our ego to convince us that that's not really what we want. And that's just easier just to, file for divorce and start over again. But remember, if you have children, this is so much more than just about you. And as parents, it is our job to raise healthy human beings. And it's not just about paying for their college education, putting food on the table and clothes on their back. We need to equip them with the skills and the experience and the exposure to see, oh, this is what a family looks like. Okay, we forgive. We talk about things. We listen. We have patience. We as parents are the role models for our children as they grow up. And if we send them out into the world ill-equipped, whose fault is that? And what is the world that we are creating when we're unwilling to be vulnerable and have these difficult conversations that are so important? And let's talk to each other. Don't put the phone down. For God's sakes, there's nothing on social media that's going to change your life like this. These conversations are going to have. And I get it's scary. I get you don't know how. But guess what? There are people out there in the world that can help you and support you and love you while you go through this process. And everything you want is on the other side of fear.
And that is rocket fuel. Thank you, Jeanell Greene. And thank you to my dear listeners. I hope that you have a rockin' day. Bye now. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, every one of our episodes is boosted by a value-packed keyword called a catchword. Yeah. This allows our audiences to text to receive even more value from our guests. So take advantage of that great value. And if you share your expertise by guesting on podcasts or TV or speaking in front of live or digital audiences, then you're leaving anonymous fans behind. So go get a catchword at catchwords.com, KETCH words.com, and use podcast20 as a promo code for 20% off your setup fee. Look, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Rocket Fuel podcast so you never miss your jolt of rocket fuel. Until next time, adios. Yay!